My presentation today as the NSCA, I present the data set, first data set of our big initiative project on profiling and data collection for soccer athletes across age groups. For this project, we're aiming to get data from soccer athletes at all ages. Right now we have data from U10 to U12, 14, 16, 17, 19 to college athlete and professional soccer player in the KC area. And our big project, our big aim is to have a developmental pathway, normative data for benchmarking soccer athletes. In this data set, however, today we try to connecting a little bit of our physical metrics into technical development of elite pro indoor soccer athlete here in KC. And we hope my data and my presentations give some insight for strength conditioning coach and technical soccer coach to identify talents, developing individualized training program to support player development.
Over the fall and spring this past year, we did a resistance training intervention study on the FDI, which is the first dorsal interosseous. So it's just this bulging muscle that comes out when you squeeze your thumb and your index finger together. We look at the FDI for basic motor unit questions. Remember, we have something that's really fundamental that we want to see depending on what the intervention is. And so that's kind of why we looked at that. Also, people tend to use their hands pretty much the same, so it tends to be pretty similar across subjects. Especially with regards to like strength output, people aren't really trying to push real hard with the finger or anything like that. Don't need to be typing or playing instruments a lot. But we took motor unit behavior analysis, so we looked at recruitment thresholds, firing rates, motor unit action potential amplitudes as kind of an indicator of like motor unit size. For what we did today, we did the 75% submaximal triangular contractions. Typically, you'll probably more commonly see like the plateaus, but we did the triangulars just to get some little bit of extra data so that we might be able to see a little bit more stuff. Later on, which we still have to do a whole bunch of work just sitting at the computers and playing with the numbers on that. But yeah, basically the gist was that motor unit behavior doesn't really change, at least with the subjects that we saw from doing a first testing session and doing a second one, and then all the way at the end following that resistance training intervention, even though they did get stronger. Which initially I was pretty confused by that because I figured they're getting stronger, something's going on in there, especially with short-term intervention. Muscles not really getting a whole lot bigger or anything like that. But again, kind of looking back on it, everything that we did was relative to the percent NVC. So even though the percent NVC did increase, the relative percentage of that which we looked at remained the same. So we might see some individual like subject variability and just stuff like that. But the relationships didn't really change at all, which looking back on it is pretty much what we expected to see. Even though the FDI isn't a muscle that people really train in the weight room or anything like that, the quads are, the biceps are, back, shoulders, and all that kind of stuff. And we look at strength coaches and kind of what they know about the neural adaptations to resistance training. It's pretty fundamental, just what's in whatever that section of the NSCA textbook is. And so we're trying to kind of build that out a little bit and kind of look at what actually is happening on an individual motor unit basis. Because you can look at EMG amplitudes and I'll tell you some information. You can look at firing rates and I'll tell you some information, but a lot of times some of that firing rate information is not looked at on a subject by subject basis, and they just group everyone together. So that doesn't account for individual variability or errors at one specific subject throwing off the rest of them or anything like that. And so what we do tends to provide a better picture of what's actually going on, for the smaller motor units, for the middle motor units, and for the larger motor units with respect to the contractions that we have to do looking at. So we can then take what we have here, because the FDI is a similar fiber type muscle to gas lateralis, the biceps, or other muscles that we tend to care about with lifting weights, is that we can extrapolate what we see here to what we see with what strength coaches are doing, what athletes are doing, what your average gym bro or gym girl is doing, and that way they can actually kind of see and understand a little bit more what's actually kind of going on. So all of this is still kind of laying like the fundamental framework for just like the initial adaptations that we may see with a resistance training intervention.
Well, my presentation today was on the series of studies that we've done about baseball hitting. And today we're focusing on a small part of a bigger project, which is the relationships between what's going on with a vertical jump done on a force plate and the exit velocity of the ball when you do a batted ball velocity test. And in essence, it helped us to see the important role of the load during the swing and its relationship to the counter movement during a vertical jump, which in the future may give us some insight on training methods that might help a baseball player perform on the field.